Story 1. Letting all the small things get swept under the rug instead of working through them. Ignoring major red flags because of love. We were completely different people after 10 years of growth. Story 2. My husband began a relationship during my treatment for my brain tumor with someone from our pharmacy. He started hitting me out of anger, left me and my daughters for that person, and married her a week after our divorce was finalized. The new wife sued me for emotional distress because she was upset that he was convicted of domestic battery, and she also sued my 12-year-old autistic child for emotional distress because she was mean to her. I cannot make this up. It took a lot of therapy and a horrible sense of humor to survive it. Story 3. After 21 years of marriage and 25 as a couple, she became an alcoholic. Childhood traumas she would not confront made her become dependent on alcohol for the last 3 years of the marriage and pushed me to the breaking point. This was mainly because she refused to admit there was a problem. We divorced, which she did everything she could to delay and make acrimonious. My children, now grown, came to live with me. She died of liver and multiple organ failure within 4 years of the divorce. Although I was highly stressed at the time, the whole situation makes me sad now. Story 4. I got tired of seeing our money spent at the racetrack, treating his friends to drinks at the bar, and he was extremely verbally abusive to me when he drank. We had a real trifecta of reasons. After 14 years of marriage, I got the house and the mortgage. He married the mistress. That marriage lasted 2 years. Then he wanted to come home and promised he would do better. By then, I was so happy he was gone that I thought it was pretty funny. He did not appreciate being laughed at. Story 5. My parents were married for 25 years when my mother was in a fairly serious car accident, started taking classes at the local college for the first time, and was then diagnosed with breast cancer, all within 6 months. The youngest sibling was 16, and the rest of us were out of the house. My father decided he wanted to be a kid again and cheated on my mother with his friend's wife. They did not actually divorce until 15 years later, so they were legally married for 40 years, but they were separated, living apart, and dating other people. They kept trying to get back together every couple of years, but one wanted fewer responsibilities, and the other wanted to be taken care of. It was really difficult for my siblings and me to reconcile the man we looked up to so much with the same man who broke our family. The relationship between us and our father has never recovered. Story 6. Our daughter was diagnosed with a terminal illness. I discovered my partner was trying to start a new replacement family secretly. Story 7. After 12 years and 3 children, I caught her having an affair. Her response was, "Why can't you just be happy that I found someone I like?" Story 8. For some reason, my husband felt like hitting me anytime we had an argument. He believed it was the better way of resolving our issues. One day, he hit me and I had a miscarriage. I sued him and left the marriage. Story 9. We were married for 12 years and had our first baby after buying our dream home. She was in a wheelchair due to childbirth complications, and I cared for her full-time while taking care of the baby. After 6 weeks of paternity leave, I returned to work. She met someone in an online video game and they spent all day, every day talking. We were locked down during COVID-19, and she never met him in person. I found out what was happening when the explicit videos she was filming of herself in our house to send to him synced to the tablet we shared in the living room. We were in divorce proceedings before our baby was 1 year old. Story 10. Her bipolar disorder finally got the better of us. I supported her through many episodes, suicide attempts, and overspending, even the first infidelity. It was still us versus the disease. But when she stabbed herself in the stomach in front of our 9-year-old son during a drug-induced psychotic break amid another affair with an alcoholic, it's a long story. I knew I had to pull the plug. On the bright side, she hit rock bottom after that and rebounded with some help from me and her family. She is marginally better now, even though I suspect she is off her medication again and things may not end well. Story 11. My wife and I had a good marriage. It was not perfect, but divorce never crossed my mind. She became involved online with a man she had known since childhood. She became emotionally entangled and could not let it go. After 29 years of marriage, it ended in a matter of months. She has been married to him for 2 years. I am now engaged and will be getting married next year. Story 12. We had children. It triggered his latent avoidant tendencies, and he avoided me for half a decade before I was finally able to drag the truth out of him. He never wanted to be married and never wanted to be a father. He stayed out of obligation and duty, but he was miserable and took it out on me, never on the kids, just me. You can feel sympathy for someone while also feeling betrayed on such a fundamental level that you never want to see him again. Sometimes I miss the man I married, but he never really existed. He was a mask for a guy who ended up being a jerk. Story 13. Infidelity. He met a woman through work and started an extramarital affair. I found out through mutual friends that he was caught cheating on her 3 months after they were married. I wish I had known before I married him that his father regularly cheated on his mother and his brother regularly cheated on his sister-in-law. Family tradition of infidelity. Story 14. I had finally reached a breaking point where I was going to take my own life if I stayed in that emotional void. I could not continue to carry everyone's secrets and abuse. Divorce cost me almost every relationship I had, all my material wealth, and put my children through hell. But I am alive. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. Story 15. 25 years stayed through alcoholism, major drug addiction, and a few rehab stays. He paid me back by cheating with someone in our friend group and getting addicted to pornography. I was trauma bonded but finally broke free. During the divorce, he wrecked on a scooter and had a traumatic brain injury. Our kids and his father decided to withdraw care. I did not want to make that decision. God works in mysterious ways. Story 16. It's not working anymore. We are just too different. While this is very true, it was not anything new. We were married for 16 years, together for over 20, and had known each other for 31 years by then. She had known me for 15 years when we got married. It also turned out she was having an affair for at least a year and a half when we signed the papers. I have a slight hunch that the real reason was that she simply found someone better. Story 17. I was married for almost 13 years, and we got divorced because we just fell out of love, and it was time to move on. We were basically just roommates. Story 18. I had planned to never get divorced. But surprise, I found out 6 months later that he took all our savings and bought a farm. He told me I was not welcome there and that he might move a girlfriend in with him someday. So divorce it was. Story 19. Together nearly 23 years, married for 18. Found out at Easter she was cheating on me. The emotional trauma is unlike anything I have experienced in my life, and both my parents and brother have died. I eat half a meal a day. I have lost 30 pounds in 2 months. I cannot focus at work. I am lucky to be able to take a 3-month stress leave. I wake up at 3 or 4 a.m. with panic attacks and dry heaves. I start shaking randomly and cannot concentrate on any distractions like podcasts, music, video games, or television shows. Getting out and walking or talking with friends is the only thing that helps. Every cell in my body wants to get as far away from her as possible, but we have 3 young boys. I am not leaving in a house that was intended to be my inheritance before we bought it from my mom. This home has been in the family for 70 years, so that will be an expensive legal battle. Story 20. He had always been abusive, but because he did not hit me and he loved me, I figured it was worth it. Then one day he said he wanted to hit me and that he was going to hurt our dogs someday. I left for my dog's sake. They saved my life. Story 21. I just got tired of never feeling supported. I was constantly feeling invalidated, especially during a health crisis that nearly ended my life. My ex didn't believe me when I said something was wrong and chose to believe the doctors who said I had anxiety. I ended up on many emergency room trips alone, and it honestly tore me apart that I had no support and everyone treated me like I was crazy. It turns out I have May-Thurner syndrome and was battling a huge blood clot in my left leg, which severely impacted my circulation, made me weak, increased my heart rate, and caused an impending sense of doom. No one was on my side until I had 2 pulmonary embolisms at work. By then, I was crying myself to sleep every night alone in our guest room and crying all the way to work. My leg was purple, but it was always dismissed. The day I had my pulmonary embolisms, I could barely pull my pants over my leg without screaming. He also seemed annoyed that he had to take me to the emergency room. We worked at the same company. I cried all the way to the parking lot as he walked 10 feet ahead of me. They scanned my lungs and found 2 large clots, then discovered a clot from my belly button to my left ankle. I was never able to forgive him for that, and he didn't want to talk about it in therapy years later because it made him feel bad. I'm surprised I made it as long as I did. Story 22. She left me for another woman. I do not have the parts to compete with that. However, I discovered that liking women is something we had in common. Story 23. The first 8 years were great. Then she changed. What she had once called an amazing marriage suddenly wasn't great. She rewrote history and blamed me. I got us into counseling. We spent a vast amount of money, and I made all the changes she wanted. It was a year of hell. Then the counseling worked and things got better. Then one day, 11 years in, she gave me a big hug, said she loved me, and said she needed to run to the grocery store. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang, and I was served papers. Long story short, her lawyer made the divorce nasty. She demanded extremely intrusive discovery. When she refused to retract it, I demanded the same of her. That discovery process uncovered 4 separate affairs that began at the 8-year mark. When the settlement was finally agreed upon, she changed her mind and wanted to stay married. She refused to sign the papers. I was a hard no on that and kept the pressure on. So, 6 figures in legal fees and 7 figures in asset split later, here I am. Story 24. He was nicer to other people, constantly blamed me for his issues, did not take any accountability, and I was over it. I did not want to live the remainder of my life that way. Story 25. There were many things, but one that really stood out was that he wasn't working while I worked the second shift. I would be getting ready to go to work, and he would be going back to bed to take a nap. Then he would make a rude comment like, "Nice cellulite." Story 26. 20 years. She upgraded to husband 3.0 after years of uncontrolled spending. I put my foot down and she left. Fortunately, the next man married her less than 2 years later, freeing me from many remaining years of income equalization. I should really send him Christmas cards. Story 27. Been married 30 years. It evolves. You aren't the couple you were before children. You aren't the couple you were when everyone was healthy. You aren't the couple that traveled every weekend like you used to. Takes thinking, reflection, and communication. We have had many highs and lows, but when I wake up next to her, I can't imagine that being anyone else. She loves me. I love her. We would die for each other. We go on trips without each other, such as girls' trips or golf trips, and we are fine with that. We need our together time and our alone time. We understand that about each other. If you get to an unhappy place, stop and think about it. Talk to a friend or sibling. Figure out why. For me, it was clearly work. I wasn't in control at work, so I had to be in control at home. That caused many battles at home, unnecessary and damaging. But once I realized work was the problem, I fixed it. Life was better. I could go on for days. I'll just say that marriage is work and, in my case, 100% worth it. There will never be another like her. Story 28. They developed an addiction to prescription opioids that completely changed their personality. First, they alienated all their friends, and when they were all gone, they alienated me. Very sad. Story 29. No dates, no vacations, no solo time together, no complimentes, no romance. I just slowly, over time, lost the energy to try to fight for us. I cannot live the rest of my life without ever being taken dancing. Story 30. I caught her somewhere she was not supposed to be. I then went home, locked myself in a room with pen and paper, and began planning my divorce. Leaving the marriage turned out to be one of the best decisions I have ever made in life. My current partner and I have no trust issues, and we just click. As for my ex, we occasionally see her at an annual convention here, where she tries to take our picture. An old neighbor told me she is being supported by her 70-year-old sugar daddy. Story 31. The catalyst was me catching her cheating on me just shy of 13 years in. She wasn't sorry about it, just like she generally wasn't ever sorry about anything. That gave me reason to do a high-level rethink of the whole situation, and the reality was we were perfect on paper, but in real life it was never a functioning partnership and I was miserable. In fairness, she didn't want to stay together either. We have 2 children and co-parent fairly well, so I'm grateful for that. Honestly, I think having a court order defining our respective rights and obligations makes it easier to get along because she can't just dictate how it's going to be. We actually have to compromise and agree. Story 32. Textbook. Grew apart. Looking back, I realize I married someone whose core values were not compatible with mine. At the time, I saw myself as easygoing and adaptable, so I figured we could overcome those differences because love conquers all. Right? Spoiler alert. No, it does not. In reality, I spent 2 decades losing my identity. We both felt very alone in our relationship and ultimately could not repair the distance. Story 33. I got sober and realized that we did not like each other. He did not respect me and was verbally and emotionally abusive towards me. I did not want to be unhappy for the rest of my new life. Story 34. After 16 years, my first wife decided she was a lesbian. She did not tell me. I only found out when I walked in on her cheating with her best friend. I was arriving on a red-eye flight but was not feeling well, so I went home instead of going to the office. There is life after divorce. I hear people say, we had ups and downs like everyone. And that was true in my first marriage. In my second marriage, it has only been UPS. Even when we disagree, there is never anger, just adults discussing differences of opinion. Story 35. My ex was lazy and expected me to pay, cook, clean, and raise his 5 kids. He didn't start that way, but it slowly turned into that. We lived in my houses the whole time. I made significantly more than him, but we split expenses evenly. The kids were in his full custody, with minimal supervised visitation with their mother. I waited until they had basically finished school, then I left. The kids were all traumatized from abuse. I had cared for all of them since elementary school and did not want to make it worse. Story 36. After a lot of counseling and introspection, we realized we both made decisions to not move on very early in the relationship, and that neither of us was probably ever going to get what we needed from the other. We are just that different. She should have never moved in with me. I should have never invited her to move in with me. When she didn't tell me she loved me back the first time I said it, I should have moved on. There were many points along the way that I should have moved on. It just took me about 24 years to realize my happiness is important. I had to make the divorce happen. Otherwise, I would be on my deathbed not having had genuinely loving touch for even more decades. Story 37. She was my narcissistic abuser. After my father passed, I became very depressed and started therapy. Therapy revealed much about my childhood trauma and how my wife treated me just like my mother used to. I grew mentally stronger and began setting boundaries, then consistently enforced them. She became very abusive, though less over time. One day, she asked for an open marriage, insisting on that or divorce. I chose divorce, which apparently shocked her. Later, I discovered she had already found her next victim. Life became difficult and dark. Therapy is incredible, and there is kindness in the world. I began long-distance dating a close friend. We married in 2021. She is the partner I always wanted, supporting me as I support her. We have a beautiful daughter. Life is much better now. Story 38. 18 years married, 24 years together. We just grew apart and lived separate lives, slept in different bedrooms, and took the children on separate vacations. She also refused marriage counseling for years, even after a major argument in which she said she was okay with divorce. She backtracked, still refused therapy, so I filed for divorce anyway. Story 39. I think divorces are like motorcycle accidents in that there is not just one cause, but a combination of factors which, if only one or two were different, might have changed the outcome. The moment that truly ended it for me was when my ex-wife became so offended that she screamed at our therapist and accused him of being unprofessional and unethical for saying that we should not get divorced. Story 40. He decided his relationship with alcohol was more important than his relationship with me, and he thought it would be fun to solicit female attention via Facebook and dating applications. So I left him to it. Story 41. I'm divorcing my wife because she didn't know how I like my coffee. I like my coffee the same way I like my women, without other people involved. Story 42. He developed schizophrenia and did not seek any help, therapy, or medication for it. I did not know that was what was happening until after I left. I just knew something was terribly wrong. Story 43. She abused me for 8.5 years and got away with it. She cheated several times. She threatened me with a knife 3 times. She ran me over with a car, causing injury. She drove our 3 children drunk into a ditch. She maintained a relationship with a friend that was and still is inappropriate. She lied to her support group about me hitting her. She convinced me to get a vasectomy, then had unprotected sex with someone else months later. I do not know if any of my 3 children are biologically mine. To top it all off, she is portrayed as the victim in all of this. Story 44. I recently asked for a divorce. We have been married for 9 years, and I am tired. I have cried, calmly expressed myself, shown my own growth, and then asked. Nothing changed. I did, though. I changed. Story 45. After 20 years of being called pitiful, accompanied by a sneer, for wanting sex with the woman I still found the most beautiful in the world, and after more than 5 years of no sexual activity, a man's attitude changes when he is called pitiful by the woman he worships. Story 46. She did not tell me she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 17 years into our marriage. She medicated herself with alcohol. According to her, she is no longer bipolar. Story 47. The 5+ years of dead bedroom, gaslighting, and a myriad of other issues were difficult. But the straw that broke the camel's back was her complaining to a friend that I asked her to get a driver's license and hearing her refer to our marriage as this. As in, when I agreed to this, I expected to never have to drive. This was a 12-year-old marriage, living together for 15 years, and knowing each other and being friends since 10th grade. Story 48. Not divorced, but separated. She disappeared one day with the children, falsely accused me of being emotionally abusive, went through my emails, cloud storage, messages, and location history, and refused to let me see my children for over a month. The reason, apparently, in sickness and in health, does not apply to mental health. The irony is my mental health has vastly improved since she left. It will be our 17th anniversary in August, if we are not divorced already by then. Story 49. I honestly do not know. Everything was great. Then all of a sudden, my wife changed completely. I do not know what I did, but she told me, I cheated on you while we were married, so I could feel better about cheating on you in high school. Story 50. Self-medicating undiagnosed bipolar disorder with alcohol. She improved once she was diagnosed and properly medicated, but it was too late to salvage anything. Story 51. Married for 15 years. We were not right for each other from the beginning, but we had children and did not want to hurt them by getting divorced. I often describe my first marriage as being like an airplane that was doomed to crash. It just took a long time to find a place to land gently. Story 52. After 20 years, social media led her to an emotional affair that I discovered. We moved past it, but then she felt entitled to be happy. She stopped helping around the house, started buying many fancy clothes, wearing a lot of makeup, and getting dolled up. She was an earth angel hippie. She took selfies, posting them so people would tell her how pretty she was. She became obsessed with Instagram and Facebook, needing to prove how awesome everything was or to compare her life to others. She decided to ruin the relationship to find her happiness. Basically, she had a midlife crisis and became a very narcissistic person. She didn't like my character anymore and felt like I was an old car. She needed a newer model. It was awful. The worst part is I still have to see and speak to her all the time because of our children. She also decided to be honest and told me how fed up she was and that she was open to dating me. That is when I walked away. Story 53. The slow fade of intimacy. We stopped really talking around year 12. We became more like roommates who occasionally shared a bed. We tried counseling for 2 years, but you cannot force someone to want to connect. Story 54. Before we married, We talked a lot about the future and agreed on a few key things. Not to have children immediately, to live for a few years in another country, to settle long-term in a city in our own country. As soon as we got married, she started pressuring me to have children. We had one son, which canceled the plan to move overseas. When our son was 2 years old, she pressured me to move back to the city where her parents live. I slowly gave in to most of her requests until one day I realized she never had any interest in living the life we had agreed on. She had lied and manipulated me even before we got married, and she always made me feel guilty about everything. So I decided to separate and later divorce her. Looking back, it had been more than 10 years of our lives. I love my son, but I feel I was robbed of the life I wanted to live. Story 55. She admitted what I had always known. She always wanted to be with a woman. She gave me an ultimatum to try other partners or get divorced. I made the wrong choice and said I did not want to get divorced. She and her new partner then teamed up to say I was emotionally abusive, which in Washington state is considered domestic violence. I lost custody of the daughter I had raised from birth to 5 at a hearing I was not allowed to attend, after she abandoned us for 17 days and refused to speak to her own daughter. It has been 4.5 years. I am still fighting for my little girl to have a father in her life. Story 56. After over a decade of supporting her lifestyle of trips, jewelry, and whatever she wanted without working or having children, she wanted to open our relationship. I agreed because I honestly wanted more sex and did not have trouble finding it. However, while she was happy seeing other people, she became quite upset when I did. That was not bad enough. She also started lying, or maybe she always lied, but she finally slipped up, and I started catching her. Story 57. Infidelity after many years of a dead bedroom. She was the reason we had a dead bedroom, consistently rejecting me every time I tried to initiate, for years. When she finally decided she needed intimacy, she went out and was with another man instead of me. Story 58. I had been taking care of her father. Her mother had just passed away, and she was not handling it well. One day, she came in with my daughter and said I had been a godsend and that she wanted a divorce. She did not give a reason. Apparently, those evenings when she went out with her friends or to see her daughters were actually spent with her boyfriend. Story 59. Caught her cheating with another married man. To make matters worse, his wife was pregnant when they started, and we found out after the baby was born. Some people are despicable, ex included. Story 60. My wife became increasingly controlling. In the end, she told me I was going to get an allowance. I went to lunch a couple of times a week, but I am not a bar person, so my weekly expenses were less than $100. She wanted to limit me to $20. I was making about $140,000 per year. The allowance did not extend to her. That was only one of the many reasons. Story 61. My wife is thoroughly convinced I cheated on her. She thinks it happened while she was pregnant with our second child. I never cheated on her. The accusations started shortly after our second child was born. She threatened to take the kids to live with her parents and use the court to make sure I never got to see them. I know it's not healthy and shows a complete lack of self-respect, but I couldn't allow myself to just give up on my kids. I needed to be in their lives for at least some portion of their childhoods. They were 2.5 years old and just a few months old when it started. So I made the decision to try to convince my ex-wife I didn't cheat. I was unsuccessful for 8 years. I endured every one of her abusive demands because I thought it might show loyalty and bring her around to the fact that I didn't cheat. It never did. For 8 years, I was required to come home directly after work. No hanging out with coworkers afterward. No free time for hobbies outside the home. I was slowly isolated from all of my friends and family. When we got married, we decided to save our money for a big party and vacation for our 10-year anniversary instead of spending it all immediately and leaving ourselves in debt. So when the pandemic hit and we had to homeschool the kids, roughly at our 10-year mark, we sold our house and bought a recreational vehicle. I quit my 6-figure job, and we decided to travel the country and get away from people. It was amazing. This was a dream we had been talking about for a decade that most people will never experience. We parked the recreational vehicle in a trailer park a few minutes away from her parents' house. The plan was to stay for a few weeks to visit. The weeks turned into months. The kids loved spending the night with their grandparents. Then my ex started staying the night there, first for one day, then two, then a week, and so on. I thought it was great they were getting to spend time together. Then she dropped the divorce papers on me. Then I did what I should have done the very first time she accused me of cheating. I just let her walk away. Life is too short. The marriage was over when she proved she would never trust me about something that never happened years before. 12 years wasted. Story 62. Actively getting divorced right at the 10-year mark because my wife and my best friend decided they were soulmates and decided to destroy both families. After trying to understand how my happy marriage changed so quickly, I believe she is addicted to Adderall and alcohol, but is ultimately covering up some deep, unresolved childhood traumas. It is completely devastating to see two of the most important people in my life completely change and to not see my young children half the time. Story 63. We were married for 10 years and he just changed over time. I think it really started with the pregnancy and birth of our first child. From there, things went downhill. He did less housework, never cooked, left me with the kids while he went out, and had me pick him up at all hours after drinking with family and friends. He controlled the finances, spent on the credit card, consolidated into the mortgage, claimed he wouldn't do it again but never canceled the credit card. This cycle repeated. He hurt his back at work and stopped helping with anything. We needed a bigger house, a new car, a home theater system, a gaming console, and a leather lounge suite because that would help him get out of the rut he was in. He wouldn't get out of bed except to play a video game until 2 in the morning. The blame and threats started. He said I didn't give him enough sex or the kind he wanted and that I didn't initiate enough. If I left, he'd make sure I had nothing. I knew he was depressed. Asking him to help when he couldn't was me trying to make him feel bad. He controlled the money and I never had any, but it was my fault we were broke, so he had to use the credit card. Buying lunches, dinners, coffee, and going out with his friends was the only way he could feel good about himself, and I just wanted him to feel bad. I did all the cooking, cleaning, and childcare. He did what he wanted. His family was involved, and he had me cooking, making cakes, and quilts for them on top of everything at home. It ended when he gave me to one of his friends who was in a bad marriage where he wasn't getting sex, supposedly so I would give him sex. His friend was kind to me. We talked, exchanged supportive messages, comforted each other, and cried. That man taught me martial arts and encouraged me to stand up for myself. When my husband found out how I felt about this man, he called me a lying, cheating slut even though nothing happened, and he left. That became the story everyone knew about why we weren't together anymore. I wore it for 2 reasons. First, because I was used to taking what he dished out, otherwise he'd make things worse. And second, because I felt he was right. In my heart, I loved his friend, and I would have gone with him if I'd had the chance. It took a lot of time and therapy for me to realize how beaten down I was and how the kindness of that man was like a life ring in a storm. It was hold on to that or drown. I have been with my current husband for 10 years and can't imagine looking at another man. Looking back, I can't believe how much I took and how I let him blame me for the failure of our marriage. Story 64. His girlfriend wanted to be his wife. She could have him. She was number 3 and he is currently on number 6, wooing number 7 from what I recently heard. Story 65. Married for 42 years. Malignant narcissist. Tortured me and the children and was not very nice to the grandchildren. I left and divorced at age 61. Story 66. My friends, my former best friend and his husband are getting a divorce, which has become quite unpleasant. It turns out my former best friend was in a year-long relationship with another man before, during, and after their wedding, including the bachelor trip that my wife and I paid thousands of dollars for. I am very upset with him. Story 67, 32 years, and it took me too long to leave. We had a dead bedroom for almost a decade, but that wasn't really the issue. He became like another child. I did everything. We had 2 disabled sons, and he left me to work, care for them, manage the house, and much more. When he started to become verbally abusive to me, my son, and our daughter, I wanted to run. I stayed, but once I finally found the courage, I left because it was getting worse, and I saw what it was doing to my daughter. I needed to be an example of strength, of not accepting less than the bare minimum. I got sick, and if it wasn't for my now sister-in-law, I wouldn't have had help. She drove me everywhere and handled a lot. She showed me compassion and care. I understood where I stood with my husband. At 53, I am now engaged to a great man who provides everything I ever wanted. The old saying, if a man wants to, he will, is true. The last 2 years were a lesson. I encourage people to leave, get therapy, and know they are worth the fight. Story 68. Jesus, where do I start? We were married 13 years, but I should have left a long time before that. Fear of parenting alone and a perceived lack of support kept me there, but I finally realized I was already parenting alone anyway, and I did have support if I asked for it. In the last 4 years before I left him, I continued to work full-time and pay the majority of the bills, while he worked part-time after giving himself a year off. He now works 4 hours a day in a minimum wage job so he can surf after work and still receive some government benefits. He also lied for 12 months about being the primary carer of the kids when we first separated and I asked him to leave. He has never been close to their primary carer. He would fall asleep early when I was working in the evening and would not feed them dinner, put them to bed, or sort out showers. He has no idea when they have school or sporting events. He has no idea how to pay school fees and never attends parent-teacher interviews. Both kids do not tell him about their day at school. He shows no interest. They do not ask him to help with homework because he yells that he can't do it and tells them to ask their mother. As a result of this lie about being the primary carer, he now owes thousands of dollars to the government for claiming benefits by deception. He currently lives in a caravan park and can't have our kids stay or visit there. He can't keep them safe and they hate the environment. The relationship really started to go downhill in 2021 when he decided to take a year off work and quit his job without telling me. There was no physical or mental reason that he could not work during this time. Prior to this, he had a good, well-paying job. He went bankrupt and contributed absolutely nothing financially for the entire year he decided not to work. We used up our savings while I chased more stressful, higher-paying jobs. We moved to a regional coastal town to save money. He promised it would be a fresh start with new opportunities, but it was not. Every house we lived in had to be within walking distance of a good surfing beach because he likes to surf. Even if it almost broke the budget, he did not care. It was not even an option to look further from the coast. Every holiday was planned with his surfing as the priority. We have 2 kids, and he cannot control his anger toward them or me. The older they get, 11 and 13, the more they see what he does, yelling and swearing to intimidate us, control us, and escape responsibility. He fractured my jaw in the past. I had him charged, and he went to rehab because the only other option was jail. He went back to his old self after 3 to 4 months. He tried to kick me in the stomach when I was pregnant with our son and told me, "I hope you lose the baby." He hit me in the mouth while I was driving, loosened 2 teeth, and blood was pouring out everywhere. I found out from his ex that he kicked 2 of her puppies to death out of anger. When I confronted him about this, he confirmed it. He used our joint account at a brothel. He currently has no driver's license for the 5th time since I've known him. I had to give him my old car last year after I bought a new one because he couldn't afford one. He trashed that car, then asked his father to give him a car. His 82-year-old father gave up his car for him. My ex is 47. I could keep going, unfortunately. Anyway, thanks for the space to share this trauma. It reminds me that I made the right decision to end it after 13 years. Story 69. Not me, but my dad and stepmom. They had to take out a loan at some point due to some trouble my stepbrother got into. About 6 months later, they realized the interest was so high that the loan might as well have been a student loan. I decided to do some digging myself, got them to send me the agreement for the loan, and realized that it specified the loan recipient to be the married couple of X and Y. When I pointed this out, they divorced. Lenders tried to take them to court, but they won. They remarried the day after a judge ruled that the loan was now invalid, as the specified recipient no longer existed. So yes, I can say I helped my dad get divorced to avoid a bad loan. My life is a mess. Story 70. I found out she was having an affair. That was what technically ended it. But the behind-the-scenes reason was that she felt the relationship had run its course and she had fallen out of love with me to a large extent. It was a difficult way to end 25 years of marriage and over 30 years of being together. But that's just how it is. We get on okay as friends now, funnily enough, but that's only because we have children and we are both committed to being there for them. I suspect in time that contact will naturally disappear as we go down our own paths. Still, we had some good times as well as bad. And really, I'm in a much happier place outside of that marriage, if I'm honest. Much happier. Story 71, he cheated on me. We had a newborn and he felt neglected and found someone on a dating app. Deal breaker. You put your private part in someone else and it's over. Goodbye. Story 72. Ex-wife went on a vacation across the country to her parents' house. She notified me of her intentions to stay there with the children. It turns out judges strongly disapprove of such declarations from any parent. If you and I have an issue, we will deal with it. However, if you try to harm the children, Papa Bear will protect them or die trying. She eventually stopped caring for the children after a while, which was fine by me. Story 73. He let the mask slip after marriage. He was controlling, undermining, and a covert narcissist driven by deep insecurities. I found enough residual self-confidence and left before he broke me into unrepairable pieces. Then I found out he also cheated. I could not have been more done with him. He freaked out and tried to get me back. His behavior only confirmed that my decision was excellent. Story 74. I am going to be as fair and honest as possible. I was married for 20 years with no infidelity. Even during difficult times, she would say I was a great father. I am a good earner and worked throughout our marriage. There was no physical abuse. We experienced normal marital bliss. Relationships take work. In the first 10 years, I did most of the work, and generally she did too, within the usual gender roles in relationships. Around that time, after we had kids, she entered a mode where our relationship seemed not to matter. We were about 35 years old then. She would have been happy living parallel lives, and if I accepted that, we would still be married. My happiness didn't matter. It was almost like she just wanted to go through the motions until we died, without truly being a couple. This affected the sex life, but it was really an issue all over. Over the next 10 years, I tried to bridge the gap and let her know what was important to me. She would not budge. During those years, bitterness grew and fights became prolonged. I started pulling back the things I was doing to make it work. Eventually, she reached a point where I was not worth the hassle. We are now divorced. I want to make clear that there was her side and my side. I did not suddenly go crazy. I would never have been able to leave my kids. I was serious about her, loved her, and was determined to make it work. Taught me a lot. First, it doesn't matter how good you are or how hard you work. The children and the impact on them won't matter. People look out only for themselves. They are not looking for compromise. Your efforts will not be appreciated if you are not meeting their needs. They won't meet you halfway. I think once she had all the kids she wanted, she checked out and I was no longer needed. In her assessment, she knew I would remain a good dad to her kids and financially support her. To her, I was just emotional baggage, a chore she had to deal with. The chore was not worth the effort she needed to put in. Story 75, 23 years here. Ending because of how incompatible we are. We raised our children and now we are moving on. She asked for a divorce and I was not going to fight. She was unhappy, it seems, and my children and I do not understand why. She is going her own way, and my daughters are coming with me. Their choice. They should be in college right now, but we will be moving after I sell this house. There is no reason to stay here. Story 76. He cheated and lied when confronted, then admitted to it and blamed me for what he did. The irony is that the cheating was the least of these three offenses in the end. I can get past a one-night hookup. I cannot get past lying and not taking responsibility, especially after we had been together for 12 years. He was also an alcoholic, and his condition progressively worsened. Story 77. I lost respect for him. I needed someone I could rely on, and that was not him. Married for 22 years, the last 10 were mostly me staying to make him happy. I realized, after a life-changing event, that I could not stay just to make him happy. My happiness and my needs counted too. While I have not found that yet, at least I am trying and not living my life for someone else. Story 78. My parents were married for 33 years. My dad experienced a slow-moving midlife crisis over 10 years after the factory where he worked closed down. He met a woman at his new job, started an affair, and decided it was right and moral to leave my mom for the woman, who was married with young children. He is a Jehovah's Witness now. A truly bizarre turn of life events. Story 79. I regret the divorce. It happened in a moment of madness, due to circumstances and boredom. He was a great person. It was all my fault, and now I realize I should have worked harder. I really miss him. Story 80. After 12 years, many things in our life had changed due to children and buying an old house, but she was unwilling to make the changes needed to keep the relationship healthy. 3 years of therapy passed, and she would not budge on the smallest things. We are amicable and the children are doing great, but do not get married if you are not willing to adapt to the changes in life. You cannot put all the responsibility on one person. Story 81. Probably her sleeping with another man and having a secret bank account where she was siphoning money. Story 82. Married for 10 years, together for 13 in total. He was unfaithful with a woman on Instagram for over a year. She left him after 4 months. Story 83. Escalation of domestic violence. He became violent suddenly and began trying to strangle me with his hands around my throat. He eventually admitted that he would end up killing me if it continued. I walked out with just a change of clothes and my laptop. I never went back. We had been married for 20 years. Story 84. He hit my second child in the back of the head and caused him to hit his tooth on the table. The tooth healed, but once he hurt my babies, it was over. He entered therapy and anger management after I left him, and he is a really great father now. However, I had asked him for years to go and he refused. Story 85. He emotionally and mentally abused me for years. Then he cheated on me when he realized he did not like who he had turned me into. Story 86. We never should have married in the first place. The children kept us together. I was never able to let my guard down with him, mainly because he was an abusive narcissist. He would get frustrated with me due to the lack of intimacy, and I would shut down even more. He started to emotionally cheat on me, which led to me becoming an alcoholic. Finally, we said enough and decided to end the relationship. It would have been 23 years this December. Story 87. His coping mechanism changed from marijuana to alcohol because of a new job, and he made quite a show of becoming an alcoholic. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.